and welcome back to In the Works, the show where you get to follow along with us as we make our personal projects. Now, as Ilya stated on our last vlog, we've taken a bit of a reprieve from working on Scalagrim and some of our other projects to get back to working on our personal stuff, our stuff we're trying to make for Blade Show and whatnot. Now, on one of the previous blogs, a couple weeks ago, I started making this knife. So what I'm going to start on is getting it prepped for heat treat and see where we get from there. I'm going to be grinding some complicated S-shaped type fullers into this blade. I'm going to do those after heat treat. And I've noticed in the comments that some of you have asked, why do I usually grind my fullers in after heat treat? It seems that it would be counterintuitive to do that. That I should probably grind them beforehand because the material's softer. Well, there's two reasons why I usually don't. One is we have big sanders, and I just don't care. Fresh belts, nice sanders, you can grind a fuller almost just as easy in hardened material as you can in soft material. The second, if you spend all the time grinding your fuller before heat treat and you have complicated fullers, say on like the Scalagrim falchion, and then the heat treat is unsuccessful, I literally wasted several days of my time grinding those fullers in for a blade that ends up failing. We usually never have a blade that cracks in heat treat because we've done it a long time, we know what we're doing, but there's always that possibility. So I like to do almost all my fullering after heat treat. Sometimes on, say, a European longsword, we'll go ahead and rough at least some of the fuller in, but for the most part, I just grind them after. It's just a personal thing. There's, some of you get on me saying it's wrong or it's right. I don't really think there is a wrong or right. It's personal preference. If you feel like you need to do it beforehand because the material is softer, so you don't have to press as hard, fine. Like I've said many times before, if you start a grinding project and you're tentative, you're probably gonna end up messing up. So after it's heat treated, you gotta put a little more pressure, use a little more confidence, no big deal. But I'm gonna start on that. What Ilya's gonna work on is he's making a Mosaic Billet, pretty complicated one for a saber that he's gonna be making. The one problem is he needs some 1/4 by 1/4 15 and 20 to stack it up to make a little cross pattern, and can't really find 15 and 20 in that dimension. So he's gonna make a billet that's pure 15 and 20 layered, forge weld it together, draw it out to the size he needs, and then he can start actually putting his actual Mosaic billet together. Now, once I get my blade heat treated, hopefully I have enough time today, I have another old project that's been sitting around for a couple years. So a little short leaf blade, kind of like Sting, that I made a while ago. I believe it's 1,500-ish layers. I have it all written down. But I let it sit around for a while. It's gotten rusty, and honestly, in the 2 years that it's been sitting, my eye has gotten a little more refined, so I would like to go back and regrind this anyway, get my edge a little more true, and just make it a little more nice, bring it up to my current skill level and my eye level. As you can see, it's nice and straight. It's very hard, but there's some little spots here and there where the edge wanders that I can go back in with very little effort and time and true up, get it repolished, get it etched, and then I can start mounting it and get it finished up. Now, one thing I do want to mention with both of these projects, but specifically this knife that I made on the last vlog, it doesn't have a home yet. This is just something that I'm kind of putting together to try to raise some funds to get some more equipment, for filming and whatnot, just general funds for the channel. So if anybody really wants a cool Mosaic knife, when I'm done, it will be up for sale, and we will post a link where you can purchase it. First come, first serve. Let's get to work.
20 billet is tack welded together. Right now it's waiting to be heated up and then forge welded together. Remember, I only need a 1/4 inch rod, completely solid 15N, and I could not purchase that size immediately. Some of the viewers have been asking, why is it not always the case that we use the Nazel 2B power hammer and we switch to either the Bradley or sometimes even the Iron Kiss? Well, the answer is relatively complex. First of all, when it is cold outside, the oil inside the power hammer gets viscous and the power hammer doesn't quite start. If you have the blueprints for the Nazel 2B power hammer or if you have the blueprints for the Nazel power hammer or any analogous power hammer, you will know that inside right here, this compartment, there's a piston that is generating the air. Well, when it's cold, the actual compartment tightens up around the piston and it's hard for it to move. And the shop doesn't have that much power, so it becomes harder to start this powerful machine. Now, the other answer is fairly more complex. You see, big power hammers are not always the answer. In fact, big power hammers tend to destroy steel inside the billet by fragmenting it and messing up the grain. So, if you're working on a very precise Damascus billet, you're far better off not using a big power hammer, but rather a small power hammer and take your time. The other thing is, the Nazel 2B, for now, has flat dies. Flat dies are obviously flat, and what happens is, the steel, like a balloon, when it's squished, is being pushed out the sides, and the pattern goes this way and this way. And as you keep squishing, you're distorting your pattern. And if you look for a precise end result, this is not the answer, and you're far better off using something like drawing dies, or what we have in the Bradley, that is the top die is rounded.
Now, in my last episode where I left off on this, I did a little test etch and said it was ready for heat treat. But we actually had a snow day, and I took a closer look at the geometry, and I wasn't completely happy with it. So, at my home forge at my house, I actually forged this back false edge, if you will, a little longer, gave it a little more shape. I think it's much more pleasing now. Originally, the false edge stopped right here, and I just thought it was too shallow. So I forged more of the bevel. I'm gonna go now use a wood hammer and give it a little more curve, straighten the edge back out so it's nice and true. Might have to hit it on the grinder one more time just to make sure the edges aren't too thin in certain spots, but then we'll get it ready for heat treat. All right, now that I've got the shape forged back into my blade the way I want it, now I have to do a little bit of grinding just to kind of true up all my sweeps, make it look a little better. And I've gotten a little thin in spots because I pre-ground it before I went back and reforged it. Changed my mind. Try not to do that. Try to get your forging right the first time. But I got my respirator and my face shield like you guys always want me to do. And almost every time I grind, especially all day long while I'm actually working here at BKS, I always wear my respirator and I always wear a face shield. Sometimes during filming, I've seen you guys comment, you know, you guys need to always wear a respirator. And honestly, we're always so rushed. Sometimes we just do the talk and get right into the work and don't wear the safety gear. But always wear a respirator when you grind. Not only are you worried about the glues and stuff that stick the sanding grit to the actual belts themselves, you also got to be worried what materials you work with. Here at BKS, we often work with chromoly, which is one of the worst things you could ever inhale. The chromium, really not good for your liver, really not good for your kidneys. So always wear a respirator no matter what you're doing. Any kind of sanding work, definitely a good idea. So, see the shape of my knife? I got the curvature I want. Just kind of got to true this up. It's a little sloppy. And then we'll be ready to heat treat it. Woohoo! already done a couple normalizing cycles. So I've already done a couple normalizing cycles on this blade while I was straightening it with the wood hammer and reshaping it. But before I actually do the final heat up and quench, I am going to heat cycle it at least one more time. It's very important to do that, get your grain where you want it to be, reduce any chances of breakage and having super large grain in your knife, which basically makes it a wall hanger art piece and not a functioning knife. And just about everything that I make, I try to make sure it's functional before it's pretty. So let's do a few heat cycles and then we'll quench it. Russell Mart asks, are you guys not with BKS anymore? Yeah, of course we're with BKS. We're here at BKS right now filming. Most of these videos take place after hours, so we work a full day at Baltimore Knife and Sword, and then we put in a few extra hours afterwards to make these videos, sometimes on the weekends. So yes, we're still here at BKS. No, we're not making Man at Arms videos. Defy Media went out of business, so we're not doing Man at Arms currently. We're hoping that gets picked up by another production company or falls into our hands one way or another. But for now, the only videos you're gonna get out of us are here on That Works. Check out these nice sax blades. In my opinion, these are one of the nicer things we get to make at BKS. Multi-bar twist, ground really thin to get those star patterns. Stabilized wood handles. These aren't done yet. The handles will get buffed and shined up with little brass guards. Very nice. These are on the way to Age of Chivalry. Age of Chivalry is our West Coast dealer. Does most of the California Ren fairs and other West Coast shows. So if you're interested in purchasing one of these beautiful pattern welded saxes, go to ageofchivalry.com, ask for Brady, tell him Matt from That Works sent you.
MGCon96 asks, did Ilya say that shallow hardening steel is good for engraving? That's not exactly what I said in the previous video. I said that the steel I received is shallow hardening, but also at the same time is good to make engraving. Now, well, to make engravers. However, the answer to this question is much more complex. For example, if you have a piece that has a hamon, a knife, dagger, or a sword, that means that the part of the blade that doesn't have a hamon, the softer section, is capable of being engraved after heat treating. So in that sense, yes, shallow hardening steel is good for engraving, and the museum pieces you see that are engraved after the blade has been heat treated, indicating that the steel in the blade had a hamon.
Now that Ilya's done the forging, we've turned the power of the forge way down to reduce the temperature. It's now ready to heat treat. I've done my thermocycles. I've also got the geometry spot on. Everything should be right. We're gonna go ahead and place the blade into the forge, let it heat up slowly, and then we're gonna quench into oil. Now I've already preheated the oil a little bit, heated up a rod, stuck it in there, stirred it around. Whenever you do a heat treat, you should always preheat your oil or your water. It's a really good idea. Nothing left to do now but quench our blade.
This is like the job Matt is the best at. The moving the blade around in the oil. All hot and oiled up. So good. So, you know that there are clamps right over there, that are already sized for a 2x4 with a blade in between? You know that?
Not everything can be just like you.
No, they're right where you took the 2x4.
I literally grabbed the clamps that were right there. So I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, it's okay, I guess.
So after the quench, it's nice to clamp your blade between two pieces of wood, really nice and tight. Keeps it as straight as possible during the cooling process. If your grind is slightly off, anything like that, the blade can tend to warp if you just leave it in an open atmosphere. But clamping it between two pieces of wood gives it your best chance to keep it nice and straight. Any little warps that happen afterwards, you can usually fix during the temper. On man-at-arms, you usually see us quench, and Ilya usually hands the blade off to me and I run straight to the vise, do a little straightening, let it sit there and cool slowly. That's a solid method, and it definitely works. It's quite theatrical because you get the smoke billowing off the blade and all that. Just clamping it between 2x4s is not all that exciting, but perhaps it's the most effective way to make sure your blade is nice and straight after your heat treat. So Ilya, how do you think that heat treat went that Matt just did?
I don't know, Matt left. He went somewhere. There's some jerk holding the camera, but I think the heat treat went very well. Actually, quite often what you see is that the lens of the camera shows the heat as being either hotter or colder than it actually is. So it's one of the things that the viewer has to keep in mind, that you see a yellow hot blade being quenched in oil or water and you think, wow, that's way too hot. Not necessarily the case. Your eye is your eye, and the machine is completely different. It has a different set of senses. In fact, cameras often enough pick up infrared that is invisible to the human eye, and perhaps that explains the phenomenon. Alright, and that's it for today. I got a bunch of my quarter range 15N and U16 bars to go into my Mosaic Damascus. Matt straightened and heat treated his knife, and it's right now clamped between two boards, ready for tempering. If some of you want to support our channel and don't want to subscribe to our Patreon, please consider buying our cool new t-shirts that are available in the links below.
Thanks for watching this episode of In the Works. Be sure to check out our brand new merch in the link bar below the video. And as always, thanks for watching, like the video, don't forget to subscribe. Catch you next time.